A single dad showed kindness, and a billionaire changed his life. Before we begin, I'd love to know something. Where in the world are you listening from? Tell me in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments what you think about this story when it's over. I really love reading your thoughts. I still remember the smell of motor oil on my hands that morning. It's funny, the biggest moments of our lives almost never feel big when they first happen. They look ordinary. They look like routine. They look like another Tuesday, another job, another problem to solve. I was just a single dad, trying to get through the day. The garage was small. The sign above it was peeling. Half the tools were older than I was. The coffee on the counter was cold by the time I finally had a chance to drink it. But it was mine, and it was enough, or at least, I told myself it was. My son, Lucas, was 10. A quiet kid, gentle, too gentle for this world sometimes. He loved drawing comic book heroes and listening to old songs I never remembered introducing him to. His teacher said he was bright, but distracted. Truth was, life leaves marks on kids even when parents try their best to hide the storms. That morning, I kissed Lucas on the head, dropped him at school, and prayed the car wouldn't make any new noises I couldn't afford to fix. When I pulled into the shop, I didn't know the universe had already shifted, but it had. And it announced itself in the form of an engine that sounded like it was coughing up its soul in front of my garage. The car rolled to a jerky stop. White luxury sedan, brand new, way out of place here. Then the door opened, and she stepped out. Not dramatically, not like a movie, no wind blowing through hair. Just a woman, maybe late 20s, confused, frustrated, slightly embarrassed. Her hands were shaking. "Hi, I think something's wrong." I nodded, wiping my hands on my rag. "Start it again for me?" She did. The sound was brutal. I winced, like the car had punched me in the face. "Okay," I said softly. "Turn it off before it finishes killing itself." She laughed awkwardly, the kind of laugh people make when they're stressed and pretending they're not. "I have no idea what happened. I was driving fine, and suddenly, everything started blinking. And then, I opened the hood. One look told me enough. Whoever serviced her car before me either rushed it, didn't care, or shouldn't have been allowed near machinery ever again. A basic connection hadn't been fitted correctly. The small failure had created a chain reaction. I could fix it, but then I saw the expression on her face. Worried, not spoiled rich girl worried, not annoyed that something inconvenienced her worried. It was fear, real fear. The kind people have when their life is already juggling too much, and one more thing threatens to collapse it all. "My day is all ready," she murmured, rubbing her forehead. "I'm sorry. Do whatever you can. Just tell me how much it is, because, actually no, just tell me later." Her voice cracked on that last sentence, barely, but enough. I've seen people who genuinely don't care about money. She wasn't one of them. "I'll take a look," I said. "Sit inside. There's water on the counter." She sat on the old chair, glanced around the messy little shop like she had just stepped into another universe. No pretension, no judgment, just curiosity. I got to work. The more I fixed, the more obvious it became. This wasn't her fault, and it wasn't going to cost me much, just time. 25 minutes later, it was done. I closed the hood, washed my hands, came back inside. "All set," I said. Her face lit up. "That fast? Sometimes life gives you easy wins," I smiled. "Try starting it." She did. It purred. Soft, clean, like a satisfied cat. Her shoulders sagged with relief like someone had just lifted bricks off her chest. Thank God. Then she reached into her bag. "How much do I owe you?" Live life. And in that moment, something inside me argued. Logic said, "You need the money. Lucas needs school shoes. Rent is due." But something deeper, quieter, older said, "Don't charge her. Not today." I don't know why. Maybe it was her eyes. Maybe it was the memory of all the strangers who once helped me when I was drowning. So I shrugged. "Nothing." She froze. "What?" It was just a loose connection. Took 10 minutes. Don't worry about it. That didn't sound like 10 minutes worth. Sound lies, I said. She stared. People usually either argue or insist on paying anyway. She didn't. Her eyes slowly softened, like she wasn't just hearing what I said, but why. You're serious? She whispered. Yeah. Silence lingered. Then she smiled. Not the polite smile you give random people. The kind that starts in the heart and moves upward. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just drive safe, I replied. And don't let anyone tell you the engine's dying if they only want your money. She laughed again, this time genuinely. Then she asked something I didn't expect. What's your name? Daniel. I'm Emma. We shook hands. Her grip was warm. She got into the car, drove off. I went back to work. And for a little while, I didn't think about her again. But stories don't end where we think they do. Life returned to chaos. The electricity company called about the overdue bill. Lucas came home with a permission slip for a field trip we couldn't afford. My landlord hinted not so subtly that he might need to raise rent next year. Money was becoming air, always around. Never enough to hold. Nights became longer. My chest felt heavier. I smiled through it, because dads don't get to fall apart where their kids can see. Then, 3 weeks later, a black car pulled up. Not the same sedan. Something bigger, shinier, more expensive than my entire garage. A man stepped out, first dark suit, expression like stone. Then, her. Emma. She wasn't smiling like last time. She was nervous. She walked toward me, hands in the pockets of her coat. I hope this isn't a bad time. It never is. Cars don't schedule their breakdowns. She laughed, but it faded quickly. Can we talk? Sure. The man in the suit stood by the car, watching everything, like a shadow with opinions. We walked a few steps aside. She swallowed. So, I didn't tell you something last time. People say that when confessions are coming. I braced instinctively. My dad owns a few companies. Well, more than a few. I didn't react. Wealth creates unnecessary awkwardness, and I didn't want to add to it. She studied me. Most people handle that differently. I fix engines, not bank accounts. She exhaled. That day when you helped me, you treated me like just a person, not a project, not an opportunity. She paused. I told my father about you. Ah, there it was. That's him? I nodded toward the suited figure. Yes, great. Rich father, blue-collar mechanic. I could already sense the judgment radiating from across the lot. He wants to talk to you, she said softly. He thinks people like you are rare. People like me? People who help without keeping score. My throat tightened slightly. She gestured toward the couch in the corner. We sat. Then he approached, commanding presence. The room changed temperature. His handshake was firm, businesslike, calculated. Daniel, he said. I'm Henry. Nice to meet you. He looked around like he was assessing an investment or a risk. My daughter insists. You're an honest man. I try. That's uncommon. He sat. No small talk, just precision. He leaned forward. Someone like you shouldn't be struggling in a place like this. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I'm doing okay. You're surviving. There's a difference. He reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table. I want to help. Everything inside me tensed. I didn't fix her car for money. This isn't payment. Think of it as appreciation, opportunity, a seed. I didn't touch the envelope. Why? He met my eyes. Because my daughter trusts you, and I trust her. Silence. Emma watched anxiously, biting the inside of her lip. Lucas flashed through my mind. Bills. Rent. 1,000 quiet sacrifices. I slowly opened it. There were zeros. Too many. My breath hitched slightly. It was more than I made in 6 months. I can't. Yes, you can. I don't want to owe anyone. You won't. There are no strings. You helped my daughter because it was the right thing. Let me do the same." His voice wasn't pushy. It was steady, respectful, but I still hesitated until I saw Emma. She wasn't smug. She wasn't superior. She was hopeful. Like this meant something to her, too. So I nodded. "Thank you." He smiled faintly. "You'll do good things with it. I can tell." They left, and everything around me looked exactly the same. But my life had just changed. I didn't know yet how much. Later that night, after Lucas went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table. Lights off, envelope in front of me, the city whispering outside. My chest felt heavy, but not with fear. With possibility. I whispered into the darkness, "Thank you." I wasn't sure if I meant God, fate, the universe, or the girl whose engine had almost died in front of my shop. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, life wasn't done being kind. Not yet. Not ever. Not if I stayed the kind of man I promised my son I would be. Ethan had never gotten used to the way the doorman said his name. "Good evening, Mr. Cole." Mr. Cole. Every time he brought Mia to Olivia's building, the title felt like a jacket 2 sizes too big. He was the guy who used to keep spare change in his truck for gas and ramen. Now he was walking through marble lobbies and glass elevators because he'd once stopped on the side of a road to help a stranger with a dead battery. Only she wasn't a stranger anymore. She was everything. That night, when the elevator doors opened and he stepped onto the top floor, he heard laughter before he saw them. Olivia's laughter, Mia's laughter, and beneath both, the deep rumble of Richard's. For weeks, the 3 of them had been spending more time together. What started as cautious dinners had become routine. Wednesday dinners, Saturday brunches, and Mia's new favorite, Sunday Sundays, in Olivia's enormous kitchen. Ethan paused in the hallway, hand on the doorknob. He could see them through the slightly open door. Mia sat at the counter, a napkin tucked into her shirt like a bib, chocolate smeared on the corner of her mouth. Olivia stood behind her, helping swirl caramel over a mountain of ice cream. Richard sat across from them, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, watching them with an expression Ethan had never expected to see on the billionaire's face. Softness, not just polite approval, not just curiosity, real, unguarded softness. For a moment, Ethan just watched. He'd spent years doing everything alone, figuring out how to be both mom and dad, learning how to stretch every dollar, pretending he wasn't scared out of his mind half the time. And now, this strange, fragile thing was happening right in front of him. He wasn't alone. "Hey, Dad." Mia spotted him first. "We saved you some ice cream, but you gotta hurry before Grandpa eats your brownie." Richard glanced over, mock offended. Grandpa would never. He slid the plate a little closer to himself, with a smirk. Olivia turned, her face lighting up in that way that still caught Ethan off guard. "You're here," she said simply, and it sounded like more than 3 words, like a quiet relief. Ethan stepped inside, letting the door fall shut behind him. "Wouldn't miss Sunday Sunday. I heard there's a brownie thief to stop." Later that evening, after Mia was tucked into the guest bedroom and the kitchen was clean, Richard invited Ethan into his study. The old Ethan, the one from before the car breakdown, before the business deal, before the dinners and the laughter, would have walked in with his shoulders tense, bracing himself. This Ethan still felt the nerves. But he walked in anyway. The study was lined with bookshelves and framed photos, boardrooms, charity galas, sailing trips. In most of them, Richard stood in the center, surrounded by people. Powerful people. Confident people. People like Ethan used to fix tires for. Richard was standing by the window, city lights reflecting in the glass. He didn't turn around right away. "You know," he said, "I used to look at this view and feel like I'd won some invisible game." He glanced over his shoulder. "Now I'm not so sure I was even playing the right one." Ethan shifted, unsure what to say. "It's an incredible view." "That's the thing about distance," Richard murmured. "It makes everything look smaller, even mistakes." He turned fully now, studying Ethan in that straightforward, unsettling way he had. "You love my daughter." It wasn't a question. Ethan met his gaze anyway. "Yes, I do." "And you love your daughter." More than anything. Richard nodded slowly, like Ethan had confirmed something he already knew. Do you know why I showed up at your shop that day with contracts instead of just a thank you card? Ethan exhaled a shaky laugh. Because billionaires don't do thank you cards? The corner of Richard's mouth twitched. Partially, but mainly because I wanted to see what you'd do with it. He moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. Most people, when offered money or power, show you who they really are. They stretch, they grab, they demand more. He set the folder on the desk and opened it, pages rustling softly. You took the deal, Richard continued, but you refused the shortcuts. No fake inflated invoices, no cutting corners. You argued to pay your guys more. You sent back a bonus check because you said the job didn't cost as much as we'd estimated. He looked at Ethan, eyes sharper now. Do you know how rare that is? Ethan swallowed. I didn't want to owe you something I couldn't repay. Richard's expression softened. And yet you kept showing up for Olivia, for Mia, even when you clearly felt you didn't belong in these rooms. He closed the folder. That's how I knew I was wrong about you, from the very beginning. Ethan's chest tightened. You weren't wrong to worry. I'm not from your world. No, Richard agreed quietly. You're not from my world. He paused. You're from hers. The words landed like a punch and a hug at the same time. She is stubborn, my daughter, Richard went on. Where do you think she gets that from? He smiled faintly. But she is also softer than she lets on, careless with herself, not with others. He studied Ethan again. I watched her when she thought no one was looking. She looks at you and your daughter like you're home. Ethan's throat tightened. She is that, he whispered. To us too. Richard walked around the desk, stopping a few feet away. For the first time since they met, he looked almost unsure. I could lose deals, he said. Money. Companies. I've done it before. It recovers. But when I almost lost her, he swallowed. I realized I've been trying to protect my family from the wrong things. He took a breath. I've been trying to protect them from risk instead of from regret. Ethan said nothing. The room felt heavier and strangely lighter all at once. Richard reached into his pocket and pulled something out. Not a contract, not a check. A small velvet box. Ethan's heart lurched. Richard. Richard held up a hand. I'm not giving you permission, he said, voice low, steady. She doesn't need my permission. I'm giving you my blessing. There's a difference. He pressed the box into Ethan's hand. What you do with that is up to you, Richard said. But if you decide to ask her, know that this time I won't stand in the way. I'll walk her down the aisle myself. The words blurred for a second as Ethan's eyes stung. I don't want your money, Ethan managed, voice rough. I never did. I know, Richard said. That's why I trust you with something more important. Ethan stood outside Olivia's apartment later that night, the box burning a hole in his pocket. He could hear soft music inside, a playlist Olivia always put on when she was winding down. Mia was asleep in the guest room. He'd kissed her forehead, watched her roll onto her side and clutch the stuffed dog Olivia had bought her at a street fair. He knocked gently. Come in, Olivia called. She was in the living room, curled up on the couch in sweatpants, hair in a messy bun. Laptop open but forgotten on the coffee table. A mug of tea sat next to it, steam curling lazily upward. She looked up the moment he walked in. Her face softened in that way that always made his chest ache. Hey, she said. Is everything okay? Dad kept you in there a while. He didn't say something stupid, did he? Ethan laughed quietly and shook his head. He said a lot of things, some of them even nice. Her eyes widened. Wow, are you sure we're talking about the same man? He stepped closer, suddenly nervous. Liv, he said softly, can we talk? She sat up a little straighter, that familiar flicker of worry crossing her face. You're scaring me. Is this about the shop? Are you okay? Is Mia okay? We're okay, he said quickly. It's actually about us. She exhaled, but the tension didn't quite leave her shoulders. Okay, that's only slightly terrifying. He sank onto the couch beside her, close enough that their knees brushed. For a second, he just looked at her, at the woman who'd gone from stranger on the side of the road to the person whose laughter filled his daughter's drawings. "You remember that day?" he asked. "On the highway? Car steaming, you cursing under your breath, telling me you barely knew how to pop the hood?" Her cheeks flushed, and she groaned. "Don't remind me. I was absolutely sure you thought I was an idiot. I thought you were stubborn," he said, "and impossible, and completely out of my league." He smiled faintly. "I was right about at least one of those." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling now. "You still think I'm out of your league?" He hesitated. "Sometimes." Her smile faded. "Ethan, I grew up thinking people like you lived on TV," he said quietly. "Penthouse apartments, drivers, vacations with passports already stamped. I didn't think people like you met people like me anywhere except at customer service counters." He swallowed. "And then you did. And you stayed." She blinked, eyes glistening. "Of course I stayed." He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the velvet. "I know our lives don't match on paper," he said. "I know I come with a kid, a toolbox, and a whole lot of stubbornness. I know your world is bigger and shinier, and sometimes terrifying. I know I'll always feel like I'm catching up." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "But I also know this," he continued. "You're the first person in a long time who's made me feel like I'm not just surviving, like I'm building something. Not just for Mia, for me too." He took a shaky breath. "And when I look at you and her together, laughing in that ridiculous kitchen, arguing about sprinkles," he laughed softly, "it feels like the home I always wanted and never thought I'd get." Her lips parted, breath-catching. "So," Ethan whispered, pulling the box out with his free hand. "I was wondering." Her eyes dropped to the box, then back to him. Tears welled instantly. "Ethan," she breathed. "Are you—" "Don't say anything yet," he said, voice cracking with nerves. "I'm already sweating through my shirt." He opened the box. The ring wasn't enormous, not by billionaire standards, but it was beautiful, simple, elegant, and chosen with the same careful hands that rebuilt engines and fixed leaks and patched broken things that shouldn't have fixed so easily. "Olivia Carter," he said, voice trembling. "Will you marry me? Not because your dad approves, not because our lives make sense on paper, but because when everything else in my life felt like it was falling apart, meeting you felt like the one thing that was finally falling into place." For a heartbeat, she just stared at him, eyes wide, tears spilling over. Then she laughed through a sob, shaking her head. "You idiot," she whispered. His stomach dropped. "That's not the answer I was hoping for." She launched herself at him, nearly knocking him back into the couch cushions, arms wrapping around his neck so tightly he could barely breathe. "Yes," she said into his shoulder. "Of course yes. Ethan, yes." He held her, relief crashing over him like a wave. Somewhere in the apartment, a door creaked. Tiny footsteps padded closer. "Dad," Mia's sleepy voice floated in. "Why are you crying? Did Grandpa eat your brownie again?" Olivia pulled back, laughing, wiping at her cheeks. Ethan turned his head to see Mia standing in the doorway, hair sticking up, eyes half open. "What's going on?" Mia yawned. Ethan held up the ring box with one hand, still wrapped around Olivia with the other. "Hey, Bug, how do you feel about maybe sharing me with Liv a little bit more? Like, forever more?" Mia blinked, processing. Her gaze darted from the ring to Olivia to her dad. "Like, married?" she asked. "Yeah," Ethan said softly. "Like married." Mia looked at Olivia, who held her breath. "Does that mean I get 2 houses with ice cream?" Mia asked. Ethan laughed. "That's your first question?" She shrugged, dead serious. "It's important." Olivia leaned over, grinning. "It means you get one very loud, very loving family," she said. "And yes, probably way too much ice cream." Mia thought for a second, then broke into a sleepy smile. "Okay," she said. "Then I want you to be my stepmom." She climbed onto the couch and squeezed between them, little arms wrapping around Ethan's waist and Olivia's side. And just like that, something in the room quietly shifted. Not with an explosion, not with dramatic music, just 3 people holding onto each other like they'd finally found where they belonged. The wedding, when it came, wasn't what anyone expected. There were no crystal chandeliers or ice sculptures shaped like company logos. No red carpet. No orchestra flown in from Europe. Instead, they rented a little venue on the edge of the city, with fairy lights strung across a courtyard and wooden tables decorated with wildflowers Mia insisted on helping pick out. Ethan's guys from the shop showed up in their best clothes, uncomfortably tugging at ties. The billionaire crowd stood nearby, watching, some clearly confused by the lack of spectacle, others secretly grateful for it. Richard walked Olivia down the aisle, his arms steady, eyes suspiciously bright. When they reached Ethan, Richard hesitated for just a second, looking between the two of them. "Don't break her," he said quietly. "She's more fragile than she pretends." Ethan met his gaze. "I won't," he promised. "But I also won't keep her from breaking open when life demands it. We do that together now." Richard's eyes flickered. He gave a single, sharp nod, then placed Olivia's hand into Ethan's. "Then, I suppose," Richard said, stepping back. "I'm not losing a daughter. I'm gaining a very stubborn son." The officiant spoke, but Ethan barely heard the words. He saw Mia standing proudly off to the side as their honor assistant, clutching a little bouquet almost as big as her. He saw his brother in the crowd, his mother, some of the neighbors who used to slip him casseroles when times were hard. He saw Olivia's friends, some still skeptical, most smiling like they'd been waiting for this longer than he had. But mostly, he saw her, the way she said "I do" without hesitation, the way her voice didn't wobble once, the way her fingers tightened around his like she already knew how to anchor him through storms. When they kissed, the world didn't stop. The city kept moving. Phones kept ringing. Cars kept honking, somewhere in the distance. But inside that little courtyard, under those fairy lights, something quietly changed. They weren't 2 worlds trying to negotiate a temporary ceasefire anymore. They were one family, messy and imperfect and stitched together with broken roads and burning engines and a joke that turned into a lifeline. Months later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Ethan stood in his new shop, the expanded version, the one built with Richard's investment and Ethan's conditions. The sign above the door read, "Cole & Carter Auto and Care." Mia had helped pick the name, insisting that care had to be in there because you don't just fix cars, you fix people's bad days. Ethan walked through the bays, listening to the familiar sounds, tools clinking, soft rock playing from a radio, the low murmur of his guys trading jokes. Behind the shop, they'd added a small waiting lounge with decent coffee, comfortable chairs, and a corner stocked with toys and coloring books. Mia had drawn a picture for the wall, 3 stick figures holding hands next to a car with a giant smile. The bell over the door chimed. Olivia walked in, hair pulled back, wearing one of the shop t-shirts over jeans. She held a clipboard in one hand and a smoothie in the other. "You know," she said, handing him the smoothie, "for someone who used to complain about paperwork, you sure sign a lot of things these days, Mr. Co-owner." He took the smoothie, tugging her closer by the waist. "I only signed the partnership agreement because it said your name on it too." She rolled her eyes, but she leaned into him. "We just got an email," she said. "Dad sent the quarterly report." She lowered her voice. "He's very impressed. Apparently you are unreasonably efficient." Ethan grinned. High praise. "Oh, and he also complained that Mia beat him at chess again and accused her of cheating. So, you know, business as usual." As if summoned, Mia barreled into the shop, a backpack bouncing against her side. "Dad," she called, "Mom says we can get ice cream if you finish work in time. But you have to hurry, because I already told Grandpa we're bringing him too. And he said he doesn't negotiate with sugar terrorists." Ethan laughed. "Is that right?" Mia nodded fervently, then spotted the new car pulling into the bay. "Customer," she whispered dramatically. Go, 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 be professional. She darted to Olivia's side, immediately adopting her assistant's stance, hands behind her back, chin lifted. Ethan watched them for a second, his daughter, his wife, standing at the entrance of the shop he never would have had without a breakdown on the side of the road and a sarcastic woman with a dead engine. He moved toward the car, putting on his work smile, the one that always made nervous customers relax. A woman stepped out, looking frazzled, keys between her fingers. Hi, Ethan said. Rough day? She huffed. You have no idea. The engine light came on, my phone died, and I swear the universe is just laughing at me right now. He smiled. Well, good news. Around here, the universe gets a little backup. He nodded toward the shop. We'll take care of you. As he opened the hood, he felt a presence beside him. Olivia slid up, slipping her hand into his for just a second before letting go. Hey, she murmured. Remember when that used to be me? Broke down on the side of the road, convinced the universe was out to get me? He glanced at her, warmth swelling in his chest. Yeah, he said softly. And look how that turned out. She smiled. Yeah, look how that turned out. Mia's laughter echoed behind them as she tried to teach Richard how to fold little paper cars from a stack of invoices. Richard pretended to be annoyed, but he was keeping every crooked paper car she made. The customer sighed with relief as they explained the problem simple, fixable, not nearly as expensive as she'd feared. Seriously? She said. You're not just making this sound easier than it is? Ethan shook his head. Nope. Sometimes things look worse from the outside than they really are once you open them up. He caught Olivia's eye. She smiled softly, knowing he wasn't just talking about cars. As the afternoon sun slanted through the shop windows, dust floating like slow-motion confetti in the beams of light, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Not fear, not survival, not even relief. Gratitude. For the breakdown that led to a beginning. For the joke that wasn't really a joke. For the billionaire who turned out to be just a very stubborn father learning how to soften. And for the woman who'd stepped out of a stalled car and into his life like it was the most inconveniently perfect thing that ever happened to him. Later that night, when the shop was closed and Mia was asleep between them on the couch, after accidentally falling asleep during movie night, Ethan looked over at Olivia. Do you ever think, he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Mia's forehead, how differently this could have gone if I'd driven past you that day, if your card had declined and you'd taken it back, if your dad had never shown up at the shop? Olivia turned her head, eyes soft. Sometimes, she said. But then I remember something. What? She smiled. You would have stopped, even if it wasn't me. That's who you are. And I would have kept being me. Stubborn, messy, trying to prove I could do everything alone. She reached for his hand over Mia's sleeping form. Life has a funny way of rerouting people like that, she murmured. We would have collided somehow. He squeezed her fingers. You think so? I know so, she said. Because no matter how many roads there are out there, this one, she looked around the little living room, the sleeping kid, the faint smell of motor oil still clinging to his shirt. This one feels like the only one we were ever really meant to end up on. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, another car broke down. Another person felt like the universe was laughing at them. But in that little apartment, on that worn-out couch, a former broke single dad and a not-so-princessy billionaire's daughter lay side by side, with their girl sleeping between them and a life they'd built the slow, hard, beautiful way. Not in one miraculous day, not in one lucky break, but choice by choice, moment by moment, until one day they looked around and realized the joke had never really been on him. It had been on anyone who ever thought love, kindness, and stubborn hope didn't stand a chance in a world obsessed with power and money. Because in the end, that broke single dad didn't just fix a car, he fixed a family, and they saved him right back.